Before we get started on today's podcast, I'd like to share with you the Hebrew word of the day, orach. Do you want to change your life? The Bible often describes your life as being a path, a road that you're walking on. There are lots of verses about this, but my favorite's in the book of Proverbs. The path of the righteous is like the morning sun shining ever brighter till the full light of day. Proverbs 4:18. I think we all want a path that shines bright, right? But for many of us, our path sometimes feels like it's dark and lonely. Instead of feeling like the path we're on is getting brighter, sometimes it feels like the path is getting darker. The Hebrew word we translate as path in this verse is orach, which is a word that describes the direction of your life. See, this word refers to a well-trodden path. So my question to you today is, do you want to change the path you're on? Are you dissatisfied with your way of life? If so, then we need to get off the well-trodden path we've been on and choose to make a walk on God's path, his orach. What does it look like to walk in God's path? Well, Psalms 119:9 says, how can a young man keep his way pure? By guarding it according to your word. This verse tells us that we keep to God's path by obeying God's word. This means worshiping and thanking God, studying his word, having community with other followers of Jesus, doing justice, living mercy, and walking humbly. So, today, are you on God's path or a path you have chosen for yourself? Why not open the Bible and pray, show me your way, Lord. Teach me your paths. Psalms 25:4. This was a reading from 52 Hebrew Words Every Christian Should Know by Dave Adamson, published by Christian Art Gifts. You can purchase this on Amazon, or you can contact Christian Art Gifts at their website. Greetings and salutations. Welcome to another episode of Coffee, the Bible and Paige. I'm Paige, your caffeine-imbued host, and here's my caffeine. Say it with me. In the beginning, coffee, and lo, it was very good. Well, today we're in episode 9, and we're going to be looking at the last half of verse 18 in Romans 1. Let's just look at the whole verse so far. Let me get back to it. Episode 8, there we go. The wrath of God is being revealed against all the godlessness and wickedness of people who suppress the truth by their wickedness. We're going to take the second half of this, where it talks about the godlessness and the wickedness of people who suppress the truth. So let's just slow down for a moment and listen to what Paul is saying in Romans 1, verse 18. Paul says, for the wrath of God is being revealed from heaven against all godlessness and wickedness of people who suppress the truth by their wickedness. We're going to look at the first word, against. The wrath of God is being revealed from heaven against. And this is all about consequences. When Paul says in Romans 1:18 that the wrath of God is being revealed against all godlessness and wickedness, the word he chooses in Greek is important. He does not use a term that suggests a sudden, violent attack. It's oriented towards godlessness and unrighteousness, a lifestyle, pressing down rather than exploding outward. Think of it as previews of coming attractions. This fits beautifully with Paul's later arguments. The wrath of God in Romans 1 is not primarily about destruction. It's about exposure. Something hidden is uncovered. God's restraining hand is loosened, and the consequences of rejecting him are allowed to settle in. In this sense, wrath looks less like God storming in and more like God stepping back. As a personal example, let me tell you the story. This is possibly one of the stupidest moments of my young teenage life. When I was a senior in high school, I began to drink alcohol a lot. My parents were both near teetotalers. They rarely drank at all. And one night I came home late, as in 3 a.m, absolutely out of my mind drunk. I had to go to work at 6 a.m, so rather than go to sleep for a few hours, I decided to stay up. I was sitting on the couch in the dark when my dad got up at 6 a.m. We were both going to the same place to work. He was my ride, and looking back, I know I must have smelled like a brewery. And he must have immediately known what I'd been up to. He probably smelled it from the other end of the house. I was coming out of being drunk and transitioning quickly into the hangover phase of the night's activities. The correct term, I believe, is alcohol poisoning. Rather than give me a good chewing out, Dad decided to make sure I never forgot this day. He quietly said, after switching on all the lights, which resulted in an immediate headache for me, "Son, it's time for breakfast. Go sit at the table." To which I replied, "It's okay, Dad. I'm not hungry." Now, Dad responded in a voice that he used when there was to be no debate. "Son, I don't think you understand. Go to the table." So I stumbled to the table. Dad proceeded to make eggs and bacon, only the eggs were gooey and runny, and the bacon was barely fried, limp and greasy. He plopped the mess on a plate, put some ketchup and mustard on it, slid the plate across the table to me, handed me a fork, and said, "Eat up." I knew that voice, so I ate. It was horrific. I choked it down, fighting it with every swallow. We then got in the truck to go to work, and about halfway there, I told Dad, "Dad, pull over now." So Dad pulled over. I threw open the door, fell into a ditch, and proceeded to throw up what felt like everything I had ever eaten or drank for the last 3 days. It was a violent experience that I remember to this day. Now, as gross an example as that is, it demonstrates perfectly the wisdom of letting consequences flow. My dad could have fallen on me like a load of bricks. But instead, he allowed the consequences of my actions to be felt to their fullest. The result? That was the last time I ever drank to excess. To this day, that memory can make me shiver. This is a great example of what Paul is saying in this chapter. As people insist on life without him, he allows them to experience what that choice produces. The judgment of God is not only in the future, it's also in the now. It's already being felt. For the wrath of God is being revealed from heaven against, we could just cover that, all godlessness and wickedness of people. Let's look at the godlessness angle. At first glance, those words, godlessness and wickedness, might seem almost interchangeable, like two ways of saying sin or immorality. But Paul is careful and deliberate in the Greek. He is not throwing out a generic label for human wrongdoing. There's structure here, a progression, and a warning embedded in the very words he chooses. If we pay attention, we can see that he's drawing a line from the deepest level of human rebellion down to the visible consequences. The first word, here I go. I'm going to see if I can handle this. Asebia, Greek word, often translated as godlessness or ungodliness. At its heart, asebia is about a lack of reverence. It's not simply doing wrong things. It's a refusal to honor God as God. It's a life lived without awe, without gratitude, without worship. It's the turning away of the heart from the one who made and sustains everything. In other words, asebia describes a vertical rupture, a broken relationship with God. Now, this is crucial. Paul is not merely pointing to behavior that can be corrected with rules or moral instruction. He's pointing to a spiritual reality, a condition of the heart. When someone is living in asebia, their choices, attitudes, and actions are shaped by the absence of God at the center of life. This lack of reverence will inevitably manifest itself outwardly, but its root is relational. Let's pause for a second and allow me to tell you something about a good friend of mine, Taylor Chastain. He has a company called Up, Up, and Away, and they minister to people in the metro Atlanta area by taking the junk out of their lives. Give this a listen. We'll come back to our Bible study in a second. This podcast is sponsored by Up and Away Junk Hauling, a Christian-owned and operated junk removal service serving the Atlanta area. They offer white-collar service in a blue-collar industry, fair prices, and no-cost estimates, with a commitment to donate and recycle whenever possible. Book online at upandawayjunk.com or call 404-909-4183. Ask for Taylor. He's the owner and a friend of mine. Up and Away Junk Hauling, helping lighten your load. And now let's return to Romans with Paige, our host. This lack of reverence will inevitably manifest itself outwardly, but its root is relational, not merely behavioral. Paul wants his readers to understand that the moral disorder we see in the world starts with this deeper spiritual turning away from God. This is a vertical issue between man and God. Think about it. Makes sense, doesn't it? If God and his standards aren't in the picture, what's left to guide you through your life? Well, it's whatever you decide to be good, which takes us to our next word, wickedness. For the wrath of God is being revealed from heaven against all godlessness and wickedness. Then Paul adds a second word, addessing, wickedness, or more literally, unrighteousness. This word grows out of the language of justice, fairness, and right order. It describes a life that has slipped out of alignment with what is good, true, and just, where things are bent, distorted, twisted, away from how they were meant to be. This one is horizontal. Addessing shows up in real, everyday relationships. It appears in how people treat one another, how power is used, how truth is handled, how the weak are regarded, how anger is expressed, how desire is indulged, how lies replaced honesty. It's injustice lived out in the community, unrighteousness expressed in social life. And Paul's point is that addessing does not appear in a vacuum. It flows downstream from godlessness. When reverence for God is lost, injustice towards people soon follows. When worship collapses, ethics collapse with it. The breakdown in our relationship with God inevitably produces a breakdown in our relationships with one another. So addessing isn't just personal failure. It's a communal fracture. It's the visible fruit of a deeper spiritual rupture, proof that something has gone wrong at the very center. Again, it makes sense. Without the standard that God has given us in his law, and without a relationship to him and with him, we are creatures of our own device. Bonus points if you know what Eagle song that line comes from. So here's what's important. Paul puts these words in a specific order. Godlessness first, wickedness second. That's not accidental. Paul's point is simple but profound. When reverence for God collapses, righteousness towards people collapses right behind it. You can't sever the vertical relationship and expect the horizontal ones to survive. And that's why Paul will go on later in the chapter to describe moral chaos, broken relationships, exploitation, violence, confusion. Those things don't appear out of nowhere. They grow out of a worship vacuum. And then Paul says something even more uncomfortable. He says, humanity is suppressing the truth. Well, let's see. Let's go up and read that verse again, just so we don't lose track. For the wrath of God is being revealed from heaven against all godlessness and wickedness of people who suppress the truth by their wickedness. That Greek word means to hold something down, to restrain it, to push it under the surface. The truth isn't missing. The truth isn't known. The truth is being actively resisted. And how is it suppressed? Well, Paul says it's suppressed in wickedness, addessing. In other words, people don't reject the truth because they lack information. They reject it because it interferes with how they want to live. Remember, addessing is this split with God being expressed in the horizontal arena. and the people around you. Remember, this word translated wickedness is a horizontal problem. In other words, it finds expression between people, not between man and God. People suppress the truth about God through their interactions with the people around them, especially those who are of God's family. This goes further than simple persecution of the godly by the ungodly. The ungodly will want to live in such a way that proves God is not necessary, causing them to actively oppose and suppress anything contrary to that notion. At best, they want to prove God is not needed here in this mud ball we call Earth. At worst, they wish to show that God is not real, a figment of the imagination. This leaves them with self-granted permission to live however they want to live and to move against anyone who thinks differently. That's a sobering thought. Things haven't changed much between the first century and now, have they? In today's America, it seems as if people are working overtime to prove how little they need or want God. And here's where we need to be careful with the word wrath. That's where we started, right? The wrath of God. Paul says the wrath of God is being revealed, present tense. This isn't just future judgment. This is something that's already happening. As I said before, God's wrath, at least in Romans 1, often looks like restraint being removed. It's like God is saying, if you insist on pushing me out, I will let you experience life without me. God isn't swatting a disobedient child in anger and frustration. He's doing what my dad did. My dad allowed me to suffer the consequences of my actions. God is allowing mankind to experience the logical result of their actions and desires. When we read that God's wrath is being revealed in Romans 1, we should hear it the same way Scripture tells the story of Pharaoh. In the Exodus account, when the confrontation actually begins, Pharaoh hardens his heart again and again. He resists. He refuses. He entrenches himself. Only after repeated willful rejection does the text finally say that God hardens Pharaoh's heart, confirming him in the direction he has already chosen. It's as if God is saying, you don't want me to be around. You don't want to interact with me. I'll make it so you don't. But he gave Pharaoh his heart's desire. That pattern helps us understand Paul's argument in Romans 1, 18 through 23. God's wrath is not arbitrary or impulsive. It's revealed as God allows people to follow the trajectory that they insist upon. Truth is not hidden from them. It's suppressed by them. God is not absent. He's pushed aside. And when reverence for God is rejected, when thanksgiving and worship are exchanged for something else, God's judgment begins to appear, not first as destruction, but as confirmation. The final step in this process is hell, the one place where the presence of God is not present. Continue in your rebellion, and one day you will hear God say, in effect, you have said and demonstrated that you do not want to know me, nor or even to be around me. I will grant your request. His exact words, well, we could find them in Matthew 25, where Jesus says, depart from me, you who are accursed, into the eternal fire prepared for the devil and his angels. Just as Pharaoh was eventually given over to his own stubbornness, humanity in Romans 1 is given over to its chosen path. The tragedy is not that God withholds light. He doesn't. But that people turn from it. And in that turning, the wrath of God is already being revealed. Remember my analogy of the hurricane? It's like seeing the outer bands of a hurricane as it approaches landfall. You're not in the thick of the storm yet, but the wind has started to howl. It's a good place to stop, and this is good stuff. I'm Paige. Here's my caffeine. Have a glorious and fabulous day in the Lord. I'm out of here. Bye-bye. Go to Amazon.com and do a search for my name, Paige Garwood, and you will find my Essays in Romans series. Each book is dedicated to a chapter of Romans and will contain the script of each podcast, plus thought-provoking questions at the end to help you with your studies. Again, Essays in Romans in Amazon. Search for Paige Garwood. You have been watching or listening to Coffee, the Bible, and Paige with your host, Paige C. Garwood, thinking with his mouth open since Noah was tarring the ark.